Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition and a new season for the Livewire here on Inside UNC Charlotte. It's my pleasure to bring you this edition, and we have kind of an action-packed lineup in the next few weeks from people who have interesting initiatives and really important ongoing activities here at UNC Charlotte. And we're glad you're with us today and hope you'll be with us going back to this time slot, Thursdays at 2 o'clock. And today we're going to get started by talking generally about a fascinating team here at UNC Charlotte, the Office of International Programs, and then specifically about an event that just happens to be one of the biggest, one of the longest. We might even stake our claim, as it were, to some of those titles outright when it comes to ongoing cultural events here in Charlotte, here in the region. UNC Charlotte's International Festival, which is just around the corner, and we're going to talk in some detail about that. All with our guest today, Joël Gallegos. Joel is the Assistant Provost for International Programs and the overseer of all things international here at UNC Charlotte. Joel, thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And by all measures, UNC Charlotte, along with so many other facets in its growth trajectory, is an increasingly international university. What's the scope of the ground that you cover, or the air that you cover,
Sure.
In international programs?
Sure, as is the case.
Yeah.
I think largely when we think about the overall goal of the Office of International Programs is to really help serve as a resource for our campus community, the faculty, and the colleges, the specific departments, to try to support and infuse an international, global, and comparative dimension to the teaching, research, and service missions of campus. And so we do that in a variety of ways. Most people recognize our office largely by the inbound and outbound activity.
Yeah.
So we currently run a fairly large scope of outbound study abroad programs. So we currently have about 46 proposals for outbound faculty-led, both spring break and summer programs abroad. We have a fairly robust portfolio of exchange and semester-long outbound programs, but we also bring in students in a number of ways. So we bring in exchange students from around the world. We bring in international students who are degree-seeking both undergraduate and graduate. And we also have a fairly large, intensive English training institute. So many students come here from around the world to be trained in English as they matriculate, many of them, into UNC Charlotte as international students. And so that's really the largest part of international programs. But we also spend a great deal of time working with the various administrators on campus, the academic administrators, the deans, the associate deans, the department chairs, to really identify the most strategic ways that they can embed and infuse internationalization in all of their curricula.
Probably at any given time in our history as a country, while on the one hand, international aspects of a university are generally regarded as critical. There are things going on in the world, things going on in the country, things going on in the economy that become factors in just what kind of momentum you can build at a university, both for student and faculty opportunities abroad, and then welcoming students and faculty from abroad to our campus. What are some of those factors, maybe generally, but then where are we right now in 2014 when it comes to trying to do the work that you're doing, and what are some of the factors that are there any that are making it easier, or I assume there are some that are making it a little tricky these days?
Sure. I think the question certainly requires a very complex response.
Right.
I think that never before has the internationalization of higher education been so complex.
Yeah.
And I think that as a result, we too experience that. And when we look at the diversity and the international city that Charlotte has become, I think that UNC Charlotte reflects that.
Yeah.
So we've enjoyed growing and increasingly robust and dynamic campus community that supports internationalization, and so that's very good news for us. We certainly have seen large increases in all of our activity, both our on-campus programming, our inbound and outbound student activity, our inbound and outbound faculty mobility. But as you mentioned, that certainly does pose certain challenges depending on what's happening in the world.
Right.
When we look at economic trends, that certainly impacts the various student populations that come here from abroad. When we look at what's happening in certain countries in the world, there may be pause, or there may be reasons for which we elect to not send students to a certain country. And so it's our goal and it's our role to maintain current with what's going on. And we have a variety of resources that we use. We have a fairly large and well-qualified staff of national leaders who have great reputations, who actually spend a great deal of time in their day learning about what is going on in the world. And so we could better inform the colleges and the students in terms of what best programs to pursue or how best to continue to advance internationalization in a way that's appropriate and safe.
For the sort of classic undergrad experience of a study abroad, our parents or family members who are these days playing an increasingly present role in those educations through year 4 or 5 or 6 of that undergrad experience. Are they more of a presence when it comes to, I think I want to have support my student doing study abroad, but does the helicopter land on your pad when it comes to study abroad?
Sure, we occasionally see the study abroad related helicopters, but I think we welcome that activity.
Yeah.
I think that never before has the notion of outbound student mobility been so strong in the U.S. For many countries in Europe, for example, given the proximity of the various countries, going from one country to another is a fairly natural activity even between languages. But for us, it's still a new notion to spend a semester or a summer abroad. And so we welcome the opportunity to engage the parents. And certainly it's a very complex process. From getting a plane ticket to getting a passport to really understanding what the curriculum will look like, the various cultural differences that one will experience while they're gone for extended amount of time. So that is true that we do spend a lot of time. When we advise students, we also advise parents often.
And do you say to a typical undergrad here at UNC Charlotte, by all means do whatever it takes, but do study abroad? Or do you say, maybe it's not right for you? Or do you subscribe to the thought that, universally it's important if you can?
Well, I think our underpinning philosophy is that it's a good thing and that we do encourage it to the extent possible. Perhaps it isn't for everyone, and so we have a fairly extensive advising process whereby we try to cast a very broad net. We want to have all students at UNC Charlotte consider the opportunity, and then of course we work with them to determine if that's the best option. I think that when we look at the typical student, historically it was perhaps a junior spending a semester or year on a language program in Western Europe. And over the years, we've noticed that things not only at UNC Charlotte, but naturally have changed over the past few decades. And so we look at social science, business, STEM students actually increasingly are interested in study abroad. And the notion of the traditional junior year abroad has certainly dissipated. While we still have that, we have many students abroad their junior year, and we encourage that, we support it. But we also, in order to respond to growing capacity and the diversification of our students wanting to go abroad, we've developed a huge portfolio of outbound programs that take place during the summer, or some that are even embedded during spring break semester or spring break courses, so that they can actually spend 10 to 12 days with their faculty on a specific discipline.
Sure. What programs, without offending the array of programs, but what are the ones that are generally considered the signature study abroad overseas opportunities for UNC Charlotte?
Sure. So even though we have increasingly students wanting to go to non-traditional destinations, we have non-traditional countries, non-traditional students in non-traditional disciplines, and we enjoy this, I think, growing interest, dynamic interest from around campus, coming from every college. So we have interest in every college developing programs. However, I still say that our typical student is still most interested in Western Europe, and so I think we would probably call our most signature study abroad programs. One of our programs is in Kingston University, which is right outside of London. That's a very popular program.
Sure.
It's very dynamic activity between the two partner institutions, as well as our program in Spain. So we have a program in northern Spain in the city of Santander in conjunction with the University of Cantabria. And UNC Charlotte organizes a program for various institutions in the UNC system. And those are probably two of the most popular. And I think that in terms of those hallmark summer programs, I would say that it's really all around the world. We have short-term programs from South Africa to Southeast Asia to Western Europe to South America, and so we see increasingly faculty coming from a variety of disciplines launching and executing programs that take place around the world.
So looking at it somewhat from the other perspective, why would a student in another country contemplating coming to the United States to study end up here? Is it just the strength of the particular academic program they're looking at? Is it the fact that Charlotte's a pretty navigable yet decent-sized city with a lot of things to do? There are already great people here. Some combination of all these things. What are the factors that you hear maybe most often that are behind what we would call an international student's decision to come here to study?
Sure, and I think many of those reasons certainly factor into the larger equation that makes UNC Charlotte a very attractive destination for our international student populations. But I think in the final analysis, it is the reputation of UNC Charlotte, and it's the disciplines that we have that often are most attractive while we have students coming in a variety of disciplines to realize degrees, bachelor, master, and PhD programs. The majority of our students coming from abroad are are graduate students, and they're normally matriculating into engineering, computing and informatics, oftentimes in business, and so I think that we do have an attractive array of degree programs, but I also think we've been hosting international students for many, many years, and so I think we've established a very fine reputation abroad. And so we are even getting now students of students that we've had, and we have kind of generational alumni.
Now, is it the case that you remember their parents, or is it?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We're working on that.
Well, maybe as a point of transition, let's remind folks who are watching us on their screens right now that this is the Live Wire on Inside UNC Charlotte. We're back again for fall, and some good news for you who are watching. We're going to rotate other hosts through this chair this fall, so you won't have to just look at me every time you want to watch the Live Wire here on Inside UNC Charlotte. But this is really a great way to get started talking about international programs. And let's put up on the screen just a quick visit to at least the front door of the Office of International Programs website. Of course, you can find that at oip.uncc.edu. But if you want any of the details behind the things that Joël Gallegos has been sharing with us so far today, please, by all means, go here and dig through it. But the feature that you're going to see first and foremost these days on this particular website is a tiny little event known as the UNC Charlotte International Festival, which this year is in its 39th year. Kind of like Joel. I had to say it. But,
perfect, but you got it.
But the UNC Charlotte International Festival kind of began as a dream almost 40 years ago now, and it really has become the premier event on campus. And let's talk a little bit about what it is, as if maybe the person who's listening to you doesn't know what it is. But let's talk a little bit about the scope as well, and attendance and participants, countries represented, that kind of thing. What is the International Festival?
Sure. Well, certainly it's an exciting event, and I think from the international program perspective, it really is UNC Charlotte's opportunity to celebrate diversity and internationalization in one day. We like to think it's an opportunity for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg community to see the world in one day. I think for those who haven't been before, it's regularly the same reaction. I had no idea how substantial such an event would be here. We're now getting upwards of 20,000 attendees here annually.
And the participants are right from this region for the most part, right?
Yes, so, for the most part. Yeah. We have a variety of cultural exhibits. We have over 70 countries represented, over 50 cultural exhibits, and so I think many of those come from the community. Many of them are student volunteers, and so we have well over 600 student volunteers participating, and many of those actually highlight and showcase their cultures for the day.
Yeah. What can we expect this year? Is it a lot like it's been every year? Are there going to be anything new or different this year? Obviously, next year is going to be a huge anniversary year, but what's in store for this year if folks need to be enticed any further?
Sure. Well, it's a fairly, this year we're following a fairly standard operation for the festival, and so we continue to have very dynamic cultural exhibits. We have some people refer to it as entertainment, but really it's a celebration of groups of students and community members celebrating their own culture, and it really is an opportunity for our own students to take advantage and to learn. And so I think that's really the most dynamic and exciting part. Now, while many people think it's the food, it really is a learning experience.
Another thing that I want our viewers to know is that while we want you to come, and it's going to be from 10 till 6 on September 20th,
Rain or shine.
we will also be streaming most of the day live, and you'll be able to get to that right here at Inside UNC Charlotte or at livestream.uncc.edu. But one of the things we realized last year when we were really experimenting with streaming live from the International Festival, but when we went back and looked at the data, not to frighten anybody, we don't see names or we can't really identify who's watching, but we can see where they're coming from. And it was fascinating. I tell this story over and over again, but as I recall, perhaps the last performance of the day was a large group of our Indian students. And they did a really fascinating, it was great, it was Bollywood dance. And not only did the seats begin to fill in much more right as they were coming on, but when we went back and looked at the analytic data on the webcast, we realized that we just had this big spike in folks tuning in the live stream from India, which is fascinating. And to me, that speaks volumes of how international this is, and the day in which we're living now, when that word can spread so quickly through folks with their smartphones and telling their families back in India to watch. And so that leads me to the question of, when it comes to your work in international programs, and again, we've established that you're 39, but back when you started, it was probably more a day of, well, if a student were going abroad or a student was here, they might write a letter back home every now and then.
Yes.
How has the ease in which we communicate globally affected the work you do? And has it made it easier or more difficult in some ways?
I think it certainly has made it much more easy over the years. I think that many students who maybe in the past would have had reservations to spend a semester or a year abroad, now, while they could connect to their parents or family or friends through Skype, through texting instantaneously. And so I think that really has fostered an environment in which they're less concerned about moving away from home. And so we certainly do see how that has not only impacted those students we send abroad, but those students we bring in. And then, of course, it opens up a whole array of opportunities for virtual learning. And so connecting our UNC Charlotte students with students in other classrooms from around the world.
Yeah. Tell me about the folks, particularly on your staff, who managed to stage the International Festival year in and year out, and one in particular, Marion Bean, who's been doing it from the beginning. That's got to be some kind of a
founder. Yes.
That's got to be a record for just about anything here at UNC Charlotte.
It is. It is. Well, we do have a pretty awesome team who spend a great deal of time developing, thinking about, considering, and executing this event. So while International Programs is certainly the lead university office, it does take a village.
Right.
And we work very closely with a number of departments, offices, divisions on campus to make sure that this is a very successful and safe event for our campus community and the Charlotte community. But our team is very excited. It's starting now all the way until the festival happens on September 20th. The office is abuzz. Yeah. People are very excited. They realize how it does impact our campus community. The culture of internationalization has changed considerably. You mentioned over the last decade or decade and a half, and we certainly have seen how that's morphed into a place that truly is international. I think when we look at the festival, we look at the great team that executes it, it really is just a melting pot, and it really just highlights UNC Charlotte's increasing and I think ongoing commitment to internationalization. Is certainly my team live and breathe this all day long, 365 days a year, but it really, more interestingly, is an opportunity for the rest of the campus community to engage.
So one last review of the details for folks who, if they haven't already, they should put this on their calendar for the 20th. It's the International Festival. It's the 39th annual edition of the International
It is.
Festival. And we really do expect somewhere between 20 and 30,000 people on campus over the course of the day. Should that intimidate us about access and parking, or is it spread out well enough that we're able to do it okay?
It is spread out perfectly fine. It's never been a problem. We're willing and interested and hoping that we have one of the best turnouts ever.
And there is not a home football game that day, so that helps. But again, the bulk of the activity is in the Halton Arena, and then in the
And around the
and
Halton Arena.
around
That's
it,
right.
and in that kind of area, kind of between the student union and the arena, and looking back in Health and Human Services and Education.
Yes.
And it makes for a great day, and in addition to the food, there are plenty of soft drinks on hand, so that if it's a day like, well, like most days have been lately, we'll be able to keep our cool, which is good. So no other reason for anybody to be concerned about access. It's
Oh, absolutely.
open and ready to go.
I think we have sufficient parking on campus, and I think it's a good point to mention that it takes place both inside and outside.
Right.
For those people who haven't attended before, they're enjoying the outside space and with the cultural exhibits, but they really have no idea that the inside is also full with equally interesting activities.
I think one small detail we hope to accomplish with our streaming webcast is that if you decide to go outside and get in line for some kind of great international food, you can keep what's going on inside on the main stage on your phone and keep an eye on what you might otherwise be missing. So we will look forward to see how that dimension enhances the experience. But overall, it's a big day coming up, and I know that you and your team in the Office of International Programs, as you said, are not just a buzz at this point, but I would imagine despite having so many years of practice, it's always something that keeps you kind of more than energized these
Well,
days.
as I said before, it takes a village, and it's
Yeah.
really an exciting event for us. It's an opportunity to showcase our global footprint.
Yeah, that's great. All right, well, I want to thank you for being our guest today on the first of this year's versions of the Live Wire on Inside UNC Charlotte. So thank you to Joël Gallegos, and thank you to you for putting us on your screen. And we will be back again this week at this time right here. So we'll see you then. Thank you.
My pleasure.